All right, welcome back live. We continue right here on Pittsburgh CW. Bob Pompeani with you. 412-575-2600 is that number to call. Got a lot of tweets in here. Ron Matthews on Twitter says, hey, Virginia reminds me of one of those Pitt teams from the 2000s, full of potential but always came up short in tourney time. And he's speaking about Tony Bennett's team. Virginia Cavaliers lost tonight to Florida State, the fourth seed in this ACC, and they beat them pretty handily by 10, but they really didn't come close to taking control of that game from Florida State. So, and you remember last year Virginia was the first team to lose to a 16 seed in that tournament. I really like their team. I still think they're going to get a #1 seed, but that loss hurts them, and you wonder now if they're going to have some trouble in the end. A really good defensive team, although tonight Florida State got inside on them, and they have some really good shooters, does Virginia, so they can score this year. But the question is, can they overcome what happened to them last year and use that as motivation this year? We also have this. Jared Starks on Twitter says, hey, Bob, with DeSmith having played last night, do you think Murray starts both games this weekend? My answer to that would be yes, Jared, because number one, tomorrow's at 1 o'clock, and then you have a night game the following night, so there's plenty of rest there, I think. And Murray's been so good, I'd keep going with him. DeSmith was outstanding. Nice to see that, but he still is the backup, and Murray is still the starter, the way I see it. Go to the lines. Paul in Beachview. What's up, Paul? How you doing?
Okay, how are you?
All right, what's going on?
I want to know one thing. The other about Dick Rote.
Uh-huh.
I want to know why he's not in the Hall of Fame yet.
You should be in the Hall of Fame.
I don't think he is, but,
Yeah, listen, he was probably the best athlete ever to come out of Western Pennsylvania. I don't think
right.
there's
I
any
mean,
doubt about
he
that.
probably had a batting average, too.
Yeah, and just what an overall career, and more than that, what a nice person. He's one of the most genuine people you'll ever want to meet. He doesn't have an attitude like, hey, I'm Dick Rote, I did all this. Although I encourage people who don't know about him, the younger generation, go on to Google and find out about him, because he's
That's right.
once-in-a-lifetime kind of talent, at least from around here.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Let's go out to Will in McKees Rocks. What's up, Will?
Hey, Bob. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, man.
Good.
I was wondering if I could talk a little bit of Pirates with you.
Sure.
Right now, with the way Jung Ho Kang's spring has been going, and do you think he has the inside track to be the starter?
Yes. Do you?
I absolutely hope so, because, I've been a huge fan ever since he's been here. But I just think that he looks so much better than when he first got here in 16. And I'm just hoping for the best.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not a good platoon situation because he's a right-hand hitter, and most of the starters you're going to face in the National League are right-hand pitchers. So if you platoon, he'll never play. Colin Moran is okay. He had a home run yesterday, but I think the way Kang has swung the bat and knowing that this team needs a little power in their lineup, I'd go Jung Ho Kang to start, and I'd work Moran in when I can. So I think Kang is really serious about what's happened to him. He understands what happened to him, why. He needs to take every opportunity and cherish it, and I think you're seeing what normally spawns out of that sort of response. He's been really good this spring. He looks great. Everybody says he's got a new attitude, so we'll see if it carries over into the regular season.
Really appreciate it, Bob. Thank you.
All right, well, always good talking to you. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Bill in Cranberry. What's up, Bill? How are you tonight?
Hey, Bob, this is Bill from Cranberry. I'm the guy that met you down at the Dapper Dan.
Oh, yeah, I remember talking to you, Billy. Sure.
Yeah. Hey, what's the story? Do you know any information about the Roethlisberger contract? I expected it to happen today.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think it's already agreed upon. If not, it'll just, cross the T's, dot the I's. It's going to happen. It was just a matter of time when it does. And by the way, speaking of that, I have to take a little shot at Monday Morning Quarterback. I have a lot of respect for what the work Sports Illustrated does, but I thought their article today, quoting two running backs, one of whom claims he was misquoted, Isaac Redman, about Roethlisberger, and the other one, some guy who makes a claim, Josh Harris, I don't even remember when he was here, that he deliberately fumbled in a game. First of all, back that up with some proof if you're going to make that allegation. But second of all, it seems to me that the people in the media who side with Antonio Brown are trying to bring this storyline, this narrative that Ben Roethlisberger is a big problem in the locker room, which is simply not true. So, I expected more from that. I thought that was a reach. I thought the headline was misleading, and I expect more from Sports Illustrated. 412-575-2600 is that number to call, but I expect the contract to be announced sometime soon. I thought it'd be already by now. I think a lot of us did, but for whatever reason, it's not been announced. Let's go to Calvin in Clearfield. What's up, Calvin? How are you?
Good evening, Bob. How you doing?
Good evening, Calvin. How are you?
Good. I got a question here and a comment. Who do you think Clint Hurl should be putting out there for opening day on Monday, April 1st with his starting pitching
Well, it's
staff?
going to be Jamison Tyone.
Okay. I'm kind of surprised by that. I thought he'd put maybe, since Musgrove just come off the DL from last year, I thought he'd put him out there maybe on the first day of baseball. I thought he'd put him out there, but I guess I was wrong. I think he had pretty good pitching on him today, did he not?
Well, he went 4 innings, gave up 4 hits, 2 runs today, struck out 5. He's going to be part of their rotation, no doubt. But
Okay.
Tyone is the ace. I think Archer's going to be the 3 guy. Williams looked good yesterday, too. He had 5 scoreless innings yet. They don't have a problem with their starting pitching. As long as it remains healthy and what you'd expect it to be, they're going to be solid there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the call. 412-575-2600 is the number. You can also tweet, as I said, at KD Pomp. And remember to join us for the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. We'll be live this Sunday night, also 11:35 KDKA, after the Penguins play at night against the Flyers. And, of course, that'll be March Madness, and we'll have brackets to talk about. And that's always a difficult time of the year. You know, you can look at this analytically, but sometimes you got to just throw caution to the wind and pick somebody you wouldn't pick just because there's so many upsets. And the parity is really more prevalent today in college basketball than ever before, which I think is a good thing. Let's go to Bob in Bellevue. What's up, Bob?
Hey, thank you, Bob, for taking the call.
Sure.
Hey, got a big question for you here. Stephen A. Smith, ESPN, rips Roethlisberger for calling out the players on his team. However, he never rips into any of the NBA players that are consistently calling out players on their teams. I wonder why.
Wow, you can make your own conclusions there. I think, first of all, again, I think there's a narrative out there among national media who, for whatever reason, support Antonio Brown. And I've said this from the beginning. 95% of their drama was on number 84. I don't think there's any question about that. He was the guy who decided to do something that he should never have done in that final week, and who knows what motivated him to do it. But he skipped out on a game. He went against his coach's wishes to get an MRI. He did everything he wasn't supposed to do, and the consequences were they weren't going to keep him around. Now, fine, he wanted out, good. If that's how you're going to force your way out, sacrifice your dignity and your reputation, you could do it that way if you want Antonio Brown, Mr. Inflated Chest, go ahead. But at the same time, I saw yesterday where Mike Mayock, the new GM of Oakland, who I respect as a man who knows his talent, said Antonio Brown was not worth the 35th pick. He wasn't worth giving up a second-round pick for. And Antonio stood there and listened to that. So I think everyone knows it was going to be a difficult sell. Not many teams wanted the best wide receiver in the NFL for the past 6 years. That, to me, says a lot about Antonio Brown. Thanks for the call. Appreciate that. 412-575-2600. Let's go to line 1. Mike in North Versailles. What's up, Mike?
How you doing, Bob?
We're
Hey,
shaking.
let me ask you something about the Pirates. I'm going to leave AC alone, Antonio Clown. But let me ask you.
I've never heard that one. I like it.
That's a good one. Can you think Moran could play second base with Gunho at third? That's what let's see you, Bob. All right, thanks for the call.
All right, thanks.
Thank
First
you.
of all, I don't think that he has the range. I thought he was slow off the line. His defense is okay, but it's certainly not full of range, and I think Adam Frazier is going to be your second baseman. But the question is, can he handle it every single day? I don't know. We'll see. He's been okay so far in the spring. He's got a nice bat. I like it in the lineup, but I'm not sure about his defense. And certainly Moran's range would limit him playing any other position but third base. All right, we're going to take a break here. We have Bruce and we have Johnny on the line. If you want to air your opinion, do it right now. You can call this program at 412-575-2600. Like to talk to you. We'll do it next right here live on Pittsburgh CW.